Welcome to Mac and Blue, the cutting-edge podcast for the nation's builders, merging the realms of construction with exciting advancements in technology. Join us on a thrilling journey where we delve into the dynamic world of blockchain, AI, the metaverse, virtual and augmented reality, and their transformative impact on the industry. Our engaging discussions span a wide spectrum, covering not only construction, economic development, supply chain, and market segments, but also exploring the vibrant tapestry of diversity within the construction landscape. We shed light on the intersection of local politics and its profound influence on the construction sector, while championing the remarkable contributions of women and minorities in construction. For all things Mac and Blue, head to www.macandblue.com, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky. Now let's get into it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Mac and Blue. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky, president and co-founder of Blue Wave. I'm very lucky today to have James Wesala. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Finally. By the way, before we got on air, I had to ask him because many of you know that I'm from the upper Midwest and we have a lot of Finlanders up there. So I asked him, is the proper pronunciation Wesala? And he said that he had some heritage, right?
Yeah.
So, but then I got corrected on it. And for all you Finlanders out there, yes, he knows how to use a sauna too.
Yeah.
Not a sauna, but a sauna.
Sauna.
There you go. Well, thanks for coming on today, James.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Just kind of a little bit of background. So I think it was funny, again, before we came on air, I was joking with James ahead, we actually met in person, and I thought maybe we had 8 to 10 years ago. Turns out we don't think we have, but we've been on chats before in this, and in the way that the whole Arizona market works, it's small as hell. He's worked with Carlos from Merge before, so he's been on he's been on us, Mac and Blue before. We have Mark Davenport, he worked at SPS Plus before, which we'll get into all that kind of background. So there's a lot of synergies and a lot of people we know, and it was about time to get someone back in the architectural community. And the fun part now with James is that we'll go into regular architecture, but he's now also teaching at ASU
full time
because he's esteemed alumni. But with that, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, you know how it goes. We don't have to give a whole resume, but go back to when you were this big.
Well,
you grew up here, right?
I grew up here for the most part. My family moved out here. My father was an electrical engineer. He worked with Bechtel.
Oh, wow.
And they constructed the Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station out west, and that's what
had in your blood. You didn't even know it.
Yeah, he's the one who taught me how to draw, and he took me to construction sites, and I was enamored with the building process before I could say the building process.
Yeah. So then, you did go to ASU though.
Yes.
Did you go into architecture right away?
So the story is, actually after high school, I went to junior college and I took construction drafting, and I had an instructor there. His name was Gary King, and he said I had a knack for design and said, he pushed me to go to ASU to pursue that. So I transferred into ASU, and I did have a knack for design, and I worked my way through there, and I got my bachelor's and my master's. I did have a year gap between my bachelor's and master's, and that because the last semester of my bachelor undergrad career, I had to have brain surgery. So that set me back a little bit, but I came through that.
Joke? Did you come out smarter?
I don't know if I came out smarter, but I did come out with a wicked cool scar.
No.
And chicks dig scars, right?
I mean, you're badass, all right.
No, it was, it was something that, altered the perspective of my life and really helped me formulate my career. But yeah, I am an alumnus of Arizona State University and proud to be a Sun Devil.
Let me just read some things here. I probably should have done this before, so I apologize, James. So let me just read the bio, just because it'll help facilitate our conversation as we go down all these different tangents. So currently, he's an assistant teaching professional. Also, you're with Kennedy Architects.
Richard Kennedy Architects, yes.
Sorry, Richard. I didn't read it fully. My apologies. Working on things all over the world. He's also serving the community in various aspects. Like we talked about, he's got his undergrad from ASU, also his master's. And then on extracurricular activities, we have co-hosting and co-producing Tracing Architecture. You co-founded that, and that's an AIA spin-off or derivative, which you can go into in detail in a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got too many AIA credentials here to list, but let's just say with the local chapter, I think you're heavily involved.
Yes, I'm very active, and I do like to promote the profession in any way possible.
And then you're also on some national boards as well. So my apologies for not getting that in earlier. He just didn't pull these credentials out of a vending machine. So congratulations, James. All right. So back to, let's go recent.
Okay.
And then we'll peel back and go on all sorts of tangents.
Sounds good.
What the hell happened, or what happened to get you back into teaching?
Well,
how does the story unfold?
The story unfolds is thankful to Carlos Murrieta that he led me to a teaching position back in 2021.
Oh, really?
And it was due to COVID. And they started the semester in the spring of 2021, and they needed an instructor. The instructor that had was scheduled to lead a class didn't believe in vaccination, or there was some sort of political issue happening. And essentially class started, and the first day of class, the student showed up, but the instructor wasn't there. So alarm bells rang, and a call to arms went out to those that had taught at ASU in the design school. And Carlos had recently taught a course in interior design on diversity in design, and he connected me with the director there, Diane Bender, and she got me into a class as a guest, and for the first few weeks before my employment paperwork went through, and she sat in and made sure I wasn't leading anybody in the wrong direction, and she was impressed. And
I was to say, what was the verdict?
Yeah, I apparently impressed her, and actually gave her some tips on Revit, so that was good.
Oh, good.
And then that unfolded into teaching into an architecture studio, and then last year I was able to teach 2 architecture studios. One with Claudio Vexstein, who's the director of the School of Architecture, and then another one with Caroline Lobo, who's a local professional and has taught at ASU here. She's well respected. Those studios went very well, and then in the spring of last year, Claudio asked me to apply to become a faculty position, and I said okay, and the rest is sort of history. And then this semester, I decided to up it a little bit, and then I'm teaching 2 design studios, both architectural, one 4th year and one 5th year, and then my graduate lecture course in the interior design school, interior architecture program under Bree Smith. And it's been a wonderful ride. Teaching is both exhilarating and exhausting at the same time. I think practice is more of a marathon, and you build your projects over time, and it's more of that. I don't want to say daily grind, but it is a slow evolving process where teaching is, you have to be on point and be focused when you engage with the students. And it's a much more focused effort when you're in the studio. And then, of course, you just build your framework for the curriculum and the course outside of that. I was lucky enough that this semester I was able to co-coordinate all 4th year studios, or we're co-coordinating 5 studios with Kate Dusdick-Smith, who's another practicing professional and instructor at ASU. And we're looking towards the 25th anniversary of Tempe Town Lake. And the city of Tempe approached the design school last spring and said, hey, we'd like to collaborate because Tempe Town Lake came out of the design school back in the 60s. It became an initiative.
I never knew that.
Yeah. So James Elmore taught a studio on the Rio Salado and what it can become, and envisioned to become a lake, an activated area where people could, congregate around it. And out of that, in the 80s, late 80s, the Tempe Town Lake was constructed, and now it's celebrating 25th anniversary. So did Tempe approach the design school and say, let's go full circle and let's have some studios? And we're focused on the north shore of Tempe Town Lake, which is a little bit under-actualized. There's some volleyball courts. There's, of course, the marina there, but there's no boathouse. There's no real architecture there. So Kate and I got together over the summer, and we started crafting this curriculum. And we have 4 projects under development. 4 different studios are developing 4 buildings, and a 5th studio is actually generating the connector spaces, or the connections between those 4 spaces. So there's a water education facility, an aquatic center, a spectate area, and then a boathouse for the marina. And those 4 projects are sort of the nodes that line the North Shore and are meant to activate it.
Is there, James, is there a timeline on that at all?
So November 1st is when we have a digital exhibition down at the Tempe Center for the Arts. and that will kick off the celebration for Tempe Town Lake by the city of Tempe. It's going to be a weekend-long event. I don't have all the details on that, but I'm not fully engaged in that event. I'm just preparing for it as
so
extra studios.
I would guess, and not to speculate too deeply here, but then let's say this all comes to maturation, and they'll go out get the whether it's some sort of financing or bond or levy or referendum or something. I would imagine that it'll eventually be on the docket. Sorry, I had the phone. I forgot to turn my phone off. But that's very interesting.
Yeah, so it may turn into a real development project. It's really just engaging the students and leveraging their creativity to decide what can happen around Tempe Town Lake, and they have an entirely different perspective, right? As young adults, and they're more engaged and see it as an opportunity, and they're just eager to create something exciting.
So let's go down that rabbit hole. So you're probably not as old as me, but you're also no spring chicken either. So the point is where I'm going with this is, you were talking about when you and Carlos go back to 2021, post whatever pandemic, COVID, all that kind of stuff, is I want to ask you that the students that you're engaged with now that you're teaching, and I would imagine it's much more collaborative now than it was probably when we went to college or whatever. But what are you seeing that those students are asking of you as their mentor and their teacher and their professor, whatever, all these adjectives and adverbs? What is it different now than when maybe we went to college? What's their engagement like with you, of what they're soliciting from you, from either advice or tangible skills or those kind of things?
I think the biggest perspective I see in the students is their use of technology. When I went through ASU, I did everything by hand. I handcrafted my models. I handcrafted all my drawings, and now everything is taught in laptop. Like students are required to have a laptop, right? And being this post-pandemic generation, hybrid or online courses is nothing unfamiliar to them. Now, the class that I currently have, I think, caught the tail end of some online courses. But it's really changed the studio culture.
Yeah.
When I went through the program, and I'm still in contact with some of my fellow graduates, that we were very close-knit. We had a designated space in the studio. We claimed our real estate. I had a little mini fridge stocked with Mountain Dew because I always wanted caffeine, and
I love it.
and that was one of the things I had. I had a drafting board set up, and I had a nice drafting chair, and that's what I spent my expenses on is getting those systems in place. And it allowed me to generate the designs that I wanted to, and I was typically the first one into studio and the last one to leave.
Because it was your passion.
It was my passion, yeah. I didn't want to be anyplace else. Yeah. Why would I want to go home when I could stay here and keep working on a design?
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
And at the time, I think I was living on the west side with my parents, and I decided to move into Tempe so I could be closer. And then, I was a 5-minute bike ride, and I was living in Tempe, and it really opened my eyes to different avenues of success. Now, the students today, like I said, they're so tech savvy, and they like so many things that I just can't keep up with them. And they have different software and modeling programs, and I try to keep up, and develop my skills for, as far as being collaborative, developing Miro boards and WhatsApp and communicating with them. they've really pushed me to continue to evolve as an architect and see things and use technology in new ways. And I also leverage my relationship with Carlos because he's a strong proponent of technology as well. I think he talked about it. He started his firm. He had a contract with Mesa Public Schools, and they went out and got 3D scanners and they scanned the schools. And when I was working with him at Merge Architectural Group, I was trained on how to use those scanners. And I remember I went up to Lake Powell to Hall's Crossing on the Utah side and had to scan a dormitory by myself. And I remember I had a rental car and I drove up there, and I was petrified on the drive up there and back because I had this $60,000 3D scanning system in the trunk, and I didn't want to don't get in a car wreck. Don't get in a car wreck. Like, I don't want to damage this equipment because, it was insurmountable amount to me at the time. And, it's amazing how we've adapted and started using this technology. He also got me into droning, one of my hobbies, and I have my FAA license to drone, Part 107A, and I've done that to not only do construction site visits to take imagery, but also I've used it to do 3D mapping of buildings and sites. So,
so you have a connection and engagement with your student population.
Yes,
You're kind of hip.
I wouldn't say I'm hip at all, but
Come on.
I guess I try to
I'm doing droning. You're right there, brother.
Yeah.
Go back to with the technology again. I mean, how do I say this? We do the same thing, Naturally, we have a construction company that has multiple facets. So I love seeing the younger people in our organization do the technology as well, to the point where I love posing a problem and they'll come back with a solution that is 10 times faster than I could have ever hypothesized, right? But what I still find myself really focusing on is not that. It's making sure that the collaboration is right. So where I guess we're going with this, James, is how does this generation of these students, how are you bridging that collaboration piece? Because even though everyone can still work in these hybrid models or whatever, teaching them that communication and the efficiency in that communication is almost just as important as the content that you're putting out. Did I phrase that okay?
Yeah, you phrased it. I mean, collaboration is a key element in this profession as well as in our education. When I was in school, I did a few group projects.
Right.
But now class sizes at ASU, they've scaled up their teaching model, and it's a number of students where you almost have to place them in groups to make sure that you're producing the work. And it's at a very aggressive schedule with us needing to have an exhibition ready by November 1st. We're essentially pushing the deadline up by a month. Of course, that means that we can't facilitate a lot of physical deliverables, but we can have digital ones.
Right.
But it still pushes the schedule up aggressively, which means it condenses the amount of time you have for research and site study and understanding the problem of the project, and then delivering it in a design that is really reflective of your solution to that problem. So they have to collaborate. And I've found that it's beneficial, but in the profession, we collaborate as well. Like, that's the first thing I noticed when I got out into the industry and started working, is that, we have to work with our consultants, we have to work with contractors, we have to work with municipalities, and then we have an owner they have to work with. That's something that I never dealt with when I was in the academic realm. It was all theoretical, and many of those constructs didn't exist, and it was very freeing.
Well, even within those silos, look at, and forget the delivery methods. We could talk about that forever, but I still come back to, I don't care what the delivery method is when you still look at the collaboration, the silos, the closer those silos are together, the better the project's going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. The further apart they are, you're creating acrimony right from the beginning, right? So in the same context of what you're doing, let me go back a second. So if I heard you say it correctly, you're basically dealing with upperclassmen in what you're mostly touching these students in?
Yeah, so I teach 4th, 5th, and 6th year students. So
Got it.
They're not incoming freshmen. They're not fresh out of high school.
So they've got their basics behind them.
They got some basics, but they're still
green.
They're still green. They're still open to new experiences, and fresh to the profession.
Again, with as successful as our economy has been in Arizona, driven by all the things that we typically talk about on this show, are your students, do most of them have interns by the time they're doing any of these studios with you? What would you say the percentage of them are that have already worked at maybe a firm or done an internship? Or help the audience understand, by the time they get to you, have they had any of those experiences, or are you kind of guiding them into that?
I'd say 75% of the students I work with have full-time jobs.
Oh, that's good.
Or part-time jobs, but they're not always within the profession. I'd say about a quarter of those are in the profession. So they're usually working or have, issues that I didn't have when I was in school. Like, I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a full-time job. When I was in grad school, I worked at SPS Plus, but the leadership there was very open to me going to school and allowed me to come and go as I needed from my school. So now a lot of my students, they're like, well, I gotta work on this day. And it's not that they're out of class. It's if I want to have like a field trip or have an outside lecture that is not in a scheduled studio time, they're like, oh, I can't make it on Monday because, I have work and we're working towards a deadline. So
what, again, you're in a unique position because you've been here. What does that recruitment kind of structure look like right now? Like, do most of these students, are they actively being recruited by the firms around town, or internationally or nationally or whatever? You know what I'm getting at? Or do you find that you and your peers within ASU are actually kind of formulating more of this, like, nudging of, hey, let's use Carlos, or more Davenport. It's like, hey, Mark, hey, Carlos, I've got a great kid. Do you have any space in your intern program? Does a lot of that stuff go on?
Well, you'd be amazed at how many times students reach out to me and want to leverage my contacts, which I'm happy to do.
Right.
Because, I can hopefully connect people and if someone's looking for work and someone has a job, that connection is great because then it facilitates a mutual beneficial relationship. Now, there's a lot of systems in place for career development that I don't know if they existed when I was in school, or I simply wasn't aware of them. Maybe I had the blinders on and I was focused on design and studio and that's it. But there's several professional organizations. AIA has, several avenues for students to develop. They have their associate program. And then there's also AIAS, which is located at Arizona State University, which it has a mentorship program. There's mentorship programs in NOMA and NOMA-S, which is National Organization of Minority Architects Students.
That's the one that Carlos advocated
yes.
for big time when he was on the show.
Yeah, he's a past president, and he actually, him and Gary Nelson impressed me so much that I joined NOMA as well, because it's an inclusionary organization, so I can be a member regardless of if my parents are from Finland or not.
I like that. Good mic drop.
Yeah.
Okay, that opens up a whole other thing I'm trying to ask.
So I think there's so many avenues for them to seek employment, and then ASU itself has a studio night that they hold, and the students present their work, and professionals come in and interact, and it's just a large event. I attended last year. I'm sure I'll attend this year. I don't know if these systems and opportunities existed when I was at school. I think there are, but then also I see students that are actively pursuing me as a senior associate at Richard Kennedy Architects. I had students reach out to me this summer like, hey, can I come in and just shadow you, as a avenue for possible internship, and with Richard Kennedy Architects, they do such great work that, a lot of students want to pursue them.
Yeah. Makes sense. What, those are the positive signs. So, but everything's got, I wouldn't say not everything doesn't have a negative, but there's also opportunities that are missed or things that are closing. So let me challenge you with a couple things. We typically we've been hearing in the industry, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but there are some things saying like AI. Let's use AI for example. Mm-hmm. With AI, the speed of AI, it's a typical architect might come up, start with a firm, they're doing the libraries, the detailed, you're a junior architect, you got to put in your legwork to learn all the systems and stuff. Well, now if AI is going to do all those, what does now a young architect that comes into a firm, what are they don't have the experience just to leapfrog 10 years of experience and now be a senior architect. If AI is supplementing all those things down at that call it the secondary or tertiary level of doing the mundane tasks, I know that sounds condescending, but it's not, is now how are we preparing these kids, young adults? How are you as a group of architects, both teachers and users, how are you navigating those waters right now? I'm sorry that was a long-winded question.
No, that's okay. I'll disagree with you. I don't think AI is doing that. What I think is AI is a tool that users can use to prompt and create things or utilize to be more efficient. At a time, meeting minutes used to be typewritten on a typewriter.
Agreed.
And mailed out through the postal system, and then the fax machine came along and those meeting minutes was faxed around. Then it was email, and now, you have cloud-based services that can share those and now you have AI that can generate it based off a transcript. I'm sure this podcast could be transcribed through AI, right?
So it does, yeah.
I don't think AI is really taking away that learning opportunity. It's just another tool to make that a learning more efficient.
Well stated.
And I think the opportunity for learning is always there.
No, that was a great rebuttal. And it dispels the myths that we all hear. Right?
Yeah.
So that's good.
Skynet is not here yet. And I say yet because I don't know the future.
You're right. You'd like to think you do.
Yeah.
Okay, what am I missing about the student body right like now? Like, what can we do to help them?
I think what's missing is I'll go back to the studio culture item. Okay. Now that students are more tech savvy, they're also more identified with their technology, or they're more in their technology, as opposed to when I was in studio, I would get up and walk around and collaborate more. Oh. Now that collaboration has to be pushed and almost forced. But I think the results are very similar. But no, I'll retract that. The results are not similar because the studio culture doesn't develop out of a social aspect. It develops out of a technical or forced aspect. Like, I love sitting down and having a conversation about architecture, about, generating buildings, about, working through the system. We could sit down and JJ and I could sit here and shoot the bull for probably 3 hours if we had enough snacks and caffeine.
Right.
But obviously we have lives and we're full of things and have stuff to do. But, that is something that I developed out of that studio culture, is like being able to sit down with a colleague and have that conversation, be it generated from nothing or from something specific. And I don't know if the students of today have that opportunity to craft that soft skill, right?
No, I'm going to agree with you, James, because I'll put the hat on as, let's say, I'm advisory in the construction management type thing. Like, I don't actively participate with ASU, but a lot of the peers that we hang with in the community that are VPs and presidents of a lot of the companies in town are ex-ASU or ASU grads, and we can name drop, but a lot of them have been on this podcast as well. And I love how they give back, right? And they're in there saying the same thing that you are, going, hey, young adults, if the technical part is you're 10 times better than we were, okay? Maybe 100 times. But the part that the university can't teach and society can't teach either is the socialization, the collaboration, and what happens. You can't hide behind an email and a text if there's problems. Well, guess what? There's always problems.
Yeah.
So how are you problem solving on the fly and things like that? And so I agree with you. Is this a negative Nancy type moment? Are we being a Karen on this podcast? No, we're not. We're just highlighting. And I have a young adult son, and I still have one in high school, and I keep telling them the same thing. It's like, listen, you are so much smarter than I was at your age. But if I put you in a room and you were forced to have a conversation to get out of the room, I don't know if you could do it.
Right.
Okay. Where I was your age, I could sell the whole room.
Right. Yeah. When I was in school, I'd have to present all my presentations and do my designs and instead of a series of colleagues, or at the time, visiting jurors who were esteemed, and like I was in awe. And
there comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
I come off as shy. I would come off as shy because, I am shy, essentially. Like, I have trouble having a conversation. I think I've worked through that a little bit as I got here.
I'd say you're past that.
Yeah. And one of the things I did was I went over to the Tempe Improv, which is near to ASU, and I signed up and did open mic night one Sunday evening. And I'll tell you what, that was the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life, and I will never do it again. But I'm so grateful that I did do it, because walking up on that stage in front of a few hundred people and not being able to see a single face because you're blinded by the bright lights and they're waiting for you to make them laugh, right? And I spent, just like I did in my architectural career, I do a series of research and I do analysis, then I do test fitting, and then, I spent about a month and a half working on a bit, and I did very well. Like, I was engaging and I got a lot of great laughs, and my friends and colleagues, or not friends, but my friends that I worked with at the time, because I was a bouncer at Tempe Improv. So it lended, I had to do well, otherwise I would get razzed by my coworkers. They said I did great, and they were surprised, but I do not lie in that it was the scariest thing I've ever done.
But see, you can admit it and share that in experience.
Yeah.
But now I'm just going to role play. If I was a student and you were telling me that, I would now feel empowered to go face my fears, right?
Yeah.
Because you fell on the sword in front of your students, quote unquote.
Right.
So with that, and then we'll move on to a couple other subjects. I want to wrap up kind of this whole student thing and not to put you or ASU in the spot, but if we're seeing these trends, as far as like, hey, the technology side, they can almost self-govern on themselves, but back to this social interaction, problem solving, whatever those things that we lumped in. Are you actively looking at that as a curriculum type thing, or how do you help them get over some of those hurdles or gaps that we're seeing?
For a curriculum based system, we like to teach the basics or the concepts.
Got it.
And then come in and use the architectural technologies tools to facilitate those basics, right? Design concept, design theory, that needs to be actuated in the actual curriculum. But the tools you do it with, I think, are elective or ancillary, right? So,
duly noted.
We all have different processes and different tools to create those processes. Those shouldn't be forced on somebody, right?
True.
But you need to have a fundamental knowledge of design concepts and design in order to graduate. And, I'm sure there's AI tools for doing code analysis. That's not something that the design school should teach, but they should teach an awareness of codes and understanding that when you build a building or design a building, it has to meet certain codes and it has to be, structurally sound, and you have to understand some of the systems. Now, at undergraduate level, they're just beginning their introductory knowledge of that this semester at fourth year, and at the conclusion they will know more. But, and structural engineers use calculating software, but that's not something that the design school should teach, right? That's the tool that a structural engineer uses. And again, that's only a tool. It's just a system that they can use to create that process.
Yeah, you answered that well. I mean, just that's patriarchy, but you framed it well so that the listener is hearing, going, I get it.
Yeah.
All right, let's take off the professor teacher hat. Let's go back to how you actually make a living. Still a participating architect, and I want to kind of couple this with your role at AIA.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back. What got you in to be, or what prompted you to be active within AIA in the first place?
I hate to say it, but I think Carlos.
We can't give this guy all the damn credit.
Well, he's a
Carlos.
great,
if you're listening,
he's a great mentor to me.
Get too big, okay?
He's a great mentor.
We love you. Don't worry.
As you know, he won the AIA Tang Young Architect Award in 2016. I think in 2012 or 13, I think he was representing AIA 10 and went to DC for a leadership summit. And, I've always been a proponent of AIA because it's the organization for architects, professional organization. It's about collaboration and sharing ideas and, pushing the role as an architect into new realms, advocacy. I think as an architect, designing the built environment is only one avenue of our profession. I think we can inform the general public on some of the skills that we generate through our career, be it starting an academic career and then through our professional career. We're great problem solvers and creative thinkers and critical thinkers. I can't watch a television commercial without thinking, why are they telling me this? Why are they telling me this story? I've been tainted by my indoctrination in this profession, which is okay because I relish that because I walk into a building and I analyze the structure. As soon as I do, I look up and oh, there's a post and beam, and
it's so funny. My wife, she'll chime in. What are you looking at? I'm like, oh, I'm just looking at it. You're such a geek,
right? You look at that, and then you see a detail that is for lack of a better word, it's sexy. You got that sexy detail.
Everyone else looks like this, and guys like you and I are going like this.
Well, how does that connect to that? And that's a great round duct. It flows, and I understand why it's blowing the air over there because the microphones are over here. It's not coming down, and you get that critical thinking at another level.
Well, I was at one this weekend where I was like, I wonder how their BIM model looked because did they see that clash detection right there?
Or you see something that went off the rails and okay.
We digress.
Yes.
Okay, so James, if I can.
So I got into AIA.
Yeah.
And I was always a proponent. Even in school, I was in AIS student organization. And another one that really pushed me is Tina Littorell. She was the executive director before John Zornicki is in AIA Arizona. And, I would attend events and one of my favorite things to do is building tours, see what's going on, be it construction, being it completely built and finished out, how is this put together? See those details that are sexy, right? And how everything comes together. And I was at a national convention in Las Vegas, and I attended what used to be the West Mountain Region board meeting, business meeting. And she said, hey, do you want to get more involved? And I said, yeah. And then she helped me become the AIA 10 state director back in 2020. So I held that position for 2 years, 2020 to 2022. And AIA 10, of course, is those licensed in the first 10 years. Right. Nationally, it's known as the Young Architects Forum.
Oh, that's what I read.
Yeah. So around the time Carlos was involved, around 2012, I believe, a subcommittee got together and decided to change the name because the connotation of young architect imposed some sort of ageism.
Versus tenure,
which is what it really is.
Or whatever I want to call it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been trying to push, kind of underground the it's AIA 10, the first 10 years as a tagline, the first 10 years. I think it just sounds better. Anyways.
So much, I'm going to challenge you then, James, much like the maturation and the, how do I call it, the development that you established at ASU as the professor. If I can go behind the scenes of you in these board meetings with AIA, what do you as a group collectively talk about now, as far as your advocacy? What would the audience love to know about the challenges that you're having at AIA and what you're doing to overcome them?
Well, after this recording tonight, I'm going to the AIA office, and there's a panel on legislative action.
Okay.
There's a panel of legislators that are talking about architecture and our impacts there, or the impacts of legislation on the architecture industry. There's a push for deregulation. There's all sorts of forced design that was coming.
Is that state or national?
State.
Okay.
Yeah. So nationally, there is no push for deregulation. Although, I'm also do some service work with the National Accreditation Architecture Board, and there is some controversy there too with how they get funded. Just like any organization or any profession, you get enough people together, there's going to be controversy.
Oh, yeah.
So
can't make everyone happy, right?
No, you can't.
Okay, so that answered. Sorry, how do I? I guess where am I going with the AIA thing some more?
How did I evolve in AIA?
Well,
how did I get involved?
No, you already kind of answered that one. I'm just trying to give the audience chits and information of like what would inspire them to get involved based on your storytelling, those kind of things. Because there's probably a bunch of, I don't want to use it, young architects or aspiring architects or Architect 10 that, if they don't already know it, how can they get involved to help even move the needle more?
So AIA is essentially a professional organization that is a network of architects, right? Mm-hmm. Either they're registered and they're AIA, they're AIA 10 in their first 10 years, the AIA Associates or Associate AIA, where they're unregistered and working towards that, out of grad school, or the AIAS, which is the student organization. Okay. It's all about evolving, and it's all about this network of individuals that not only is great to meet and employment opportunities, but collaborate and share ideas. I put together panel talks on sustainability. I put together, podcasts. All those things that have happened are a result of my network of people that I've met through AIA, which is a soft skill that I have to develop. I remember, let's say around 2008, I went to a networking event and I felt so awkward, right? I felt like I was on a, the speed dating, right? and basically it was just my own perspective that was tainted. And it was, I should get over that. And I did, right? I worked on my people skills to like really engage. And somebody that I meet out of the blue, I can have that 30-second elevator speech and talk about stuff. And maybe it'll turn into a relationship that we can collaborate further on down the road. If not, it was an engaging conversation for a minute where I gave my spiel for 30 seconds and they gave theirs, right? A friend is just somebody I haven't met yet, right? Be that professional or, in my personal life. I think, this profession is really about the relationships you have and you build, right? Because, it's not always about what happens. It's about that phone call when something else happens that opens the door for you, and then you become an assistant teaching professor, right?
You hit on it. I forgot to ask you about the podcast. What inspired it? How did it start? What does it entail? Like, let the audience know all about it.
So back in 2018, I was involved in the AIA 10 as a committee member. I think it was 2017 the conversation started. I was recently licensed. I got licensed in 2016. And another gentleman, Mandel McDonald, he introduced me to Sean Swisher. And Sean Swisher had this idea for a podcast and had been spinning his wheels for a while because he couldn't get traction with other people. And then I engaged and said, yeah, this sounds exciting. Let's try something. And then another gentleman, Matt Tehan, joined and we got together and we actually gave it traction. And 2018, we started Tracing Architecture. That was only one of the names that we threw in the hat. And for the first 2 years, we planned out our first season of episodes. And then we actually recorded 3 episodes. And the third episode we recorded was a live episode at the AIA office called Passions Within Without Architecture. It was well received, and that kicked it off, and then COVID hit. Yeah. And we had to change our model and go to, virtual recordings and recordings with masks and everything. And it was a different environment, but, we just basically kept on plugging along. And then we had another architect join us, I think in the end of 2022, early 2023, Fatima Garcia. She's at Lamar Johnson Collaborative. And then Associate AIA, Paula Perdomo. She's an ASU graduate. She works at Weddell Gilmore. She joined, and then we had more support to generate episodes and content. The reason why we all got together is because, we had questions about the profession that no one was teaching us, right?
Interesting.
And we just wanted to ask questions that nobody else was asking. And
because if you had it, so did probably hundreds more, maybe
right?
Thousands.
Yeah. What is your passion? How'd you get into architecture? And then, we had that conversation. We had the analog versus digital. What is a better process? Or, and different conversations about that. Work-life balance. How do you manage everything in your work and then also still have a life outside of work, which is still a difficult aspect. yeah, as you excel in your career or continue in your career, your work responsibilities begin to take on more and more, and your personal life almost becomes secondary, which is not very
The healthiest at times.
It's not the healthiest. It's not most beneficial, especially if you're in a marriage and have family. Like, you want to be engaged in that part of your life too. And being a business owner, like, the amount of work that goes into running a business.
Speaking of which, okay, so, and by the way, thank you, James. That was well thought out, well delivered. And again, for those of you that are taking notes, it's called Tracing Architecture. Please look into it if you're interested, and follow James on all the different social media channels. Let me take a tangent now, because I find, I'm going to go back to the contractor hat for a minute. So I'm finding that the conversations that I have with my peer group are much more collaborative than they were just even a few years ago. And we talk about the same problems. We actually talk about the same solutions. What is the architecture group talking about behind closed doors right now? And I'll give you a context. So when we get together, it's human capital, because we can't find enough qualified people. That's one. We also talk about cash flow and the problem with where we are in the economic cycle. There's plenty of money out there, but cash flow has been a big issue lately. It doesn't matter what the statutes say or whatever. It's a constant battle of when to get paid from the capital stacks right now, because let's be honest, they know with the interest rates that are there, they keep $1 million in the bank 30 more days. That's real money to them, right? Yeah. So we're going into areas that I don't think any of us have seen before, as far as pushing the envelope of how do you still maintain a profitable, healthy culture while still navigating the waters that are constantly changing. And I'm just giving you kind of a look into what we as the general contractor, subcontractor world talk about. Now, with that, then, James, what's the architectural and engineering group talking about behind closed doors?
The same thing.
Okay.
Even on the design side, we talk about lack of young talent, right? Due to COVID, a lot of architects left the industry. We have a gap, not in the young range, but in the middle to senior. Yeah. That, they have a strong experience and skill set. Some of them there's a gap there that happened because of COVID. Additionally, we are talking about the money, right? Architecture Building Index has dropped over the past year and a half. I think 14 months. It's consecutively dropped each month. And it's about, the owners not wanting to develop and hold on to that money and waiting for interest rates to be the perfect sweet spot, which they never are. But yeah,
they never are.
Right. And I mean, everybody always says this, well, we'll just wait a year and then build it then. Well, then if you do that, count on it costing 150% of what it is now, right? And I've had that happen on multiple projects.
I get that question all the time, James, and I say, well, it's really simple. It's like it's never going down.
Yeah.
It's like if you think the rate of increase will slow down, then you make that decision. But I can't predict the market, but I can tell you it's never going back to pre-whatever date.
Yeah.
If you think it's going back to $100 a foot, it's good luck.
Yeah.
You'll be standing in line with yourself for a long, long time.
Yeah. Agreed.
So it's the education piece.
And if your product is a piece of architecture that generates revenue, if you wait to build it, you're not only increasing the cost to build that project, but you're losing out on the revenue it would be generating in the meantime.
Right.
So, and I know that as the industry and profession have gotten busier and busier with different projects ongoing, so the municipalities, the permitting time has been extended. It's just blown up, and it's not comparable to what it is in other states. In California and Orange County, it's a 2-year wait to get a permit. But I remember when it was 3 months, and you would start to finish, you would have a permit. Now if you can get that in a year, that's good, or 9 months.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it was actually going to be my next question. Is there anything that your fraternity, sorority is doing to help the municipalities get over their own encumbrances, because they're having a huge problem, attracting and retaining people as well? And, not to belittle any of our industries, but it was almost like, the old adage was those that couldn't hack it over on the private side would go, work for the city or whatever and be in plan review or inspections or whatever. That's not a fair assessment, but let's be honest, those things were said. And again, how are we helping them get more qualified people or use AI, or are we all developing the same technologies and advocacy to get to the same common goal? I don't necessarily see that day in and day out, James, but that's why we talk about it openly on a forum like this of, hey, can we challenge some people, some groups, some organizations to think in more holistic terms?
Right. Well, the City of Phoenix has its self-certification program.
Yeah.
And that's one avenue. Other than that, I haven't seen any other methods to expedite the process. And the question always comes down to liability, right?
It does.
Who wants to gain that liability? Nobody does.
Because you're not getting paid more for it. No.
Right. So that's the issue. And then it comes back to, why does that liability exist in the first place? It's all about litigation. And then we go back to the conversation about legislature.
All you attorney friends out there, we're not picking on you.
No, we're not picking on you. You make a great living, and I wish I would have been a lawyer.
Yeah. Oh, James, good stuff. Well, I'm looking. I'm just looking at. We're kind of winding down time. All right, my friend. What have I not asked you that you were dying to tell? Either a story on, it's your platform. Either a call to action, talk about a story, anything that you're passionate about right now that you want the audience to know about.
I can't think of anything.
You can pick on Carlos.
Yeah, I can think of several things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about this profession in general, but I'm seeing a lot of things happening that are exciting, but also scary. You talked about AI. What are the ramifications of AI? We talked about it a little bit as just a tool, but is there a perception of AI is taking over people's jobs? Some people have that perception. Some people are scared. And I think it's just drawback to the, people that are not informed have fear, and they're going to lead into that fear.
Well stated. I mean, I'm old enough to have gone from the rotary phone to this. I've seen all the technologies, and it was funny because I fortunately felt I was never fearful. I was one of those guys that always grabbed it and looked at it as how can I make my life easier. And now I look at the young people that are working within our organization, and I encourage them to go 100 miles an hour all the time. Yeah. And now, to each his or her own. But no, those that embrace it, it's not going to replace people.
No,
it enhances their ability. I think it actually enhances their money, or the ability to make more money too, because they're allowed to take more responsibility and focus less on mundane tasks. If I'm phrasing that correctly, at least that's how we see it on our side.
And that's how we see it on our side too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, what do you do for fun?
I don't know if this is the right format, but I recently, my wife and I recently adopted 2 puppies.
Hey.
2 rescue puppies, Australian Shepherd, German Shepherd mixes, and that has been a very big aspect of our life since we've brought them into our household. And they bring me a great deal of joy and frustration, but
just like the classroom.
Yes.
I love it.
They're obviously young, and we're training them, and the goal is to get them to take them on hikes and explore Arizona. So that's really something I really like to do is explore Arizona and get into places where my cell phone doesn't work.
I could show you plenty, but kudos to you for doing that. Well, James, thank you so much for coming on today. For those of you that want to get a hold of him, he's easily accessible on, I found him. If I can find him, anyone can find him. But just to spell his last name, it's Wesala, Wesala. I got it right the second time. And other than that, just look him up he's probably an ambassador for Finland by now. So, and if you need instructions on how to build a sauna, he's probably pretty good at that too.
Yes.
Just can't thank you enough for being on today.
You've been listening to the Mac and Blue Show, brought to you by Blue Wave General Contracting. Be sure to subscribe to the Mac and Blue podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Follow JJ Levinsky on LinkedIn and Instagram. Tune in every Monday